I'm going to make sure I don't stand in front of that. Cool, let's jump in. So, show of hands, who knows who this wonderful man is? All right, not as many as I'd hoped for. So this is Marc Andreessen of the famous Andreessen Horowitz, one of the #1 VC firms in Silicon Valley. So Marc Andreessen wrote a really famous article in 2011. It was an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal called "Software is Eating the World." And his basic premise was that the prevalence of technology in a now easy form and open to anyone, where you don't need a big IT team or a big development team to get things online, means that we're going to see software everywhere. So you think about areas where you'd never expect software, like farming, right? We've got like indie farmers now who are throwing drones up into the air, mapping their whole fields, putting that into some crazy software that gives them algorithms on how to drive their farming machines best, right? Like, unbelievable. And then obviously in all other areas where you would maybe more expect it. So like music, entertainment, etc. So while I agree that the sort of democratization of technology has helped introduce software everywhere, and I mean it's certainly helped a lot of our businesses, I would say that I would offer to you that a lot of the changes that we're seeing today, things that people talk about often, the shifting landscapes, the disruption of old school industries, fintech mentioned a couple of times. I would say that that's being driven by something else. And what I would say that's being driven by is actually millennials. So what I'm going to offer to you guys today is that millennials are what is eating the world. And I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why I think that millennials are causing a lot of this disruption and shifting landscapes that we're seeing. So I'll frame it quickly with one stat. This is really important. By 2025, 75% of the workforce is going to be millennials. Now, I'm not talking about 75% of like cool, forward-thinking, fancy tech companies. I'm talking about 75% of everywhere, right? 75% of the North American workforce, minus Mexico, is going to be millennials. So massive number, keep that in mind. So 2 things. Number 1, millennials, I would say, are driving these 2 things, which are driving all of the changes that we're seeing. And I'm talking really fast because this was 15 minutes and I only have 5. So number 1, millennials are driving who gets the dope people. So they are driving which companies are getting the best talent. In order to win in any business, you need the best talent. And the second thing that they're driving is which companies are getting the dollars. So 75% of the workforce making 75% of the money, spending 75% of the money, roughly. I'm not an economist, equals the world is changing. So let's talk about both of those things. So number 1, back in the day, before my time, before most of our times, the top talent from universities had, a very clear path. And it's that they would go to the big companies of the world, the big co's, right? They'd go to Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, Acme Corp, Gold Corp, whatever, right? And they'd have their sweet, cushy jobs. The number 1 problem that those big companies are facing today is that top talent isn't going to those companies anymore. They're going to the newcos. They're going to the Googles, they're going to the Facebooks, they're starting their own companies, they're doing their own thing. And with that shift in talent comes a shift in everything that's important to that company. And that's why you're seeing all of this crazy shit happening, right? All of these big companies that were unfailable, sand shifting from underneath them. Show of hands, how many of you have taken an intro business class, finance class, or accounting class? All right, a lot more of you. So I remember 10 odd years ago sitting in my first Finance 101 class. And the very first thing that we were taught, and this is always stuck in my head and I hate it today, is companies exist to increase the wealth of shareholders. This is the number 1 thing that you learn, that the reason all of our businesses exist today is to increase the wealth of shareholders. Now, show of hands, who is that inspiring to in here? Is anyone inspired by that? Does anyone know who this man is? I don't think anyone will. This is Sam Walsh. He is the CEO of Rio Tinto, one of the largest mining mega corporations in the world. And the only reason I know who he is because I read an article by him last month. And in that article, Sam Walsh talks about his turnaround of Rio Tinto. And here's the number 1 thing he says that is important to them. I'm quite clear with our people that shareholder returns are Rio Tinto's number 1 focus. 10,000 people he's trying to entrench this to in order to turn the company around. You know what that looks like? This. Last 5 years of their stock. $75 a share 5 years ago, $300 billion market cap. Today, $100 billion. $200 billion of real money erased. Now, I'm not saying that it's 100% driven by that, but you know what? People are the most important thing, and there must be some correlation there. Who knows these people? I'm not going to plug our company, but quick shout out to the Rise team. They're all very lovely. The number one thing here, why millennials are changing where talent is going, is because the two most important things to millennials are, number one, purpose, and number two, making a change in the world. I like to say often that our best people, which is everyone who works at Rise, are volunteers. They could literally go anywhere they want and probably make more money. But the reason they're here and love being here, or should love being here, is because of the purpose and that ability to help change the world. And that gives meaning to their work. So that's sort of number one, that millennials are changing which talent is going to what companies, and the best talent is going to new companies. And number two, really quickly, because I only have 60 seconds, is that those millennials are also spending their money on companies that look like the ones that they work at. So ones that are purpose-driven, authentic, and also offer convenience. But that's where they like to spend their dough. And 75% of the workforce, biggest shift in economic impact in history. So we've seen sort of two shifts. One is from traditional brick and mortar. They're not shopping at Superstore. They're shopping at Trader Joe's, if you live in the US. They're not buying their cool sporting gear at Sport Chek. They're buying it at Patagonia or Mech. And then sort of more prominent, I guess, especially to the people in this room, is the obvious ones, right? I mean, these are the ones that you kind of expected, right? Like, who is going to keep using DVDs? Who is going to keep downloading music onto their iPads? Like, no one. Now, what's interesting is everyone speaks of these examples, these 8 or so companies, and they're cool companies, and they've done great things. But what I challenge you to think about is the massive industries underneath them that were totally disrupted. Like, we talk about Netflix and Spotify, dope companies, cool. They changed entertainment, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. This is millennials spending their dollars. We're going to have the 3 other speakers tonight. I would offer that all 3 of their companies and ours are driven by shifting landscapes caused by millennials. WealthBar, investing for millennials. Chimp, social giving. I mean, who's the number one givers? It's us, millennials, right? We want to make a difference in the world. Clio, I mean, there's an argument to be made that they took software online, but I would say, and Jack, I'm happy to sit on your board wherever you are, I would say that their bigger opportunity is actually this new breed of lawyers who are going to graduate, and they're not going to go work at Kleiner or Rotman, whatever law firm, right? Like, those days of big law firms are dead. They're going to go to small boutique firms, they're going to launch their own practices, and they're going to want to use software that is very similar to the software they use in their personal lives. All of our companies driven by these shifts. So 2 things that drive that. One is who's getting the best talent, and 2, who's getting the dollars. What does that mean for you? 3 things. 1, for those of you who are looking for jobs today, I would challenge you to be kind to yourselves and look for companies that really do speak to your purpose. Top 3 questions you should be asking in every interview. Number 1, what gets your CEO out of bed every single morning? Number 2, when you achieve your vision, what does the world look like? And number 3, and arguably most important, how do I contribute? So if I join your company, what is my role in contributing in that future? Number 2, for those of you that have businesses or are starting businesses or thinking of starting businesses, think about 2 things. Number 1, what is that purpose? What is the change that you want to see in the world? What is the change that you can inspire people? Because the only way you're going to get the amazing talent in here is if you can inspire them beyond dollars. And number 2, try to latch on to some of the changes that are happening in the world. These 4 companies, 3 companies plus mine, all successful except for mine, all latching on to these big sea changes and trying to be part of that difference. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about millennials eating the world? No one? Okay, I do this at Rise because it often gets the juices going. I require at least 1 question before I sit down. What drives me? It's a great question. It's really easy, actually. It's a lot of what I spoke about. So our whole thing at Rise is that this future of work, Paul talked about it, this future of work that so many people are excited about it is all about being purpose-driven. It's about not coming into work to make a dollar and increase returns for shareholders. It's about inspiring the 60-odd people that we have here for that bigger purpose. And our purpose is helping companies achieve their purpose through their people. So trying to get companies to understand that it's not about making a buck. It's actually about getting everyone inspired to make a change in the world. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Anyone else?
I have a question. Sorry, go ahead. What if your end product has what if it's irrespective of generations?
The question is, what if our end product is irrespective of generations?
As in it applies to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Like, I'd probably get scolded by the non-millennials in the room. I think we could broadly call it the connected generation, which is more encompassing. It's a Rockman special. Yeah, I mean, there's that, but then there's also it's 75% of people, so I mean, I don't know, account for the 75%. Any other questions?
When you guys get much bigger and you do catch shareholders and they're demanding results, how do you keep that kind of atmosphere in the company?
So the question is, when we do get shareholders, we have shareholders today. How do we keep that atmosphere in mind? And it's simple. I would say you get into bed with the right people. Sorry, that may be offside. There was a famous earnings update. I don't know who it was. I wish I knew, but the CEO basically said one of their pirate investors was like, "Hey, we want you to cut dividends. You should sell off that shitty asset and cut us dividends." And the CEO said in front of everyone, "If you don't want to invest in my company, you're happy to sell your shares tomorrow. That's not the kind of company we are." And I think it's standing up and being that kind of company. I think more and more VCs and investors are into that.
You mentioned Tom specifically. A lot of time, Tom specifically, there are children in the third world that don't need shoes. Is it about the illusion of social caring, or is it about the actual social caring?
So the question is about Toms and whether, I guess the broader question there is, am I talking about things that are real, or am I talking about just the philosophy of it? I don't actually know the Toms story. I just know that it's one of those honest companies that people like or are supposed to. I don't wear Toms. But I would say that, yeah, it's absolutely about the real spirit of it. I think those days of, and I think that John from Chimp could speak to this well, those days of CSR being part of the company are over. I think it's about, it has to be the whole company, right? Your company needs to be what you actually stand for, not oh yeah, we do that, soup kitchen once a month. That's our CSR. It needs to be ingrained into the company. And I would say that's true of whatever your purpose is. It doesn't have to be giving, but whatever it is, that's important. Cool, thank you.